Let's design the Galactic line. Let's talk about character customization and the engines that drive it. This is Uma. Uma is a volunteer project. It's much better than when I downloaded it last time, but it's still not useful for me. That's not because it's bad, it's just because they took it in a different direction. I don't need their approach. I need a different approach, and that's fine. I could adapt their approach to my approach, but I'd have to reprogram everything and create all of the assets again, so I might as well just program it from scratch. With that in mind, let's talk about how they do it. They use the exact same system as Black Desert Online. Yep. Surprise. Obviously, Black Desert Online has a couple million extra dollars thrown at it, so it's a different sort of situation, but I'm going to go ahead and show you, and if you're familiar with Black Desert Online, you'll see immediately what I'm talking about. Here's a mostly naked lady, and it's perfect for our demo here. For the body, you use bone scaling, so all of the bones get scaled to allow you to have beefier or stronger characters or whatever you need to do. These are, as far as I know, not blend shapes at all. They're all just bone scale. And that's pretty well done. They scale the bones at different levels depending on the axis you're trying to aim for and stuff like that. It's all very natural feeling and realistic. I like it a lot. There are a lot of problems with this approach. One of the big problems is there is a really, really strict limit on how far you can go using this. Black Desert Online offers almost no body customization. You got like 30 pounds, plus minus 15 pounds on the default character, and you can get a little bit taller or shorter. But the body customization in Black Desert Online is really limited. And the reason for that is because they didn't want you to run into these issues. Uma has no such problem, so they're going to let you run into these issues. So let's go ahead and make this character as heavy as she can be. And you can see that, putting aside the weird and creepy texture that they've slapped on, this is not a very convincing heavy character. One of the issues is that the character is only heavy with the bones that are projecting. The belly grows. The bust grows, but you don't have any of the secondary deposits. You don't have a fat neck, you don't have a fat chin, you don't have a fat cheeks, you don't have fat shoulders, you don't have fat legs, you don't have a fat shins. You've got the hips have been scaled up a little bit, but they're really not that fat. So how do you make your character fat? Well, you have to use blend shapes or something similar. You have to deform the mesh to add in the mass around the neck and on the shoulders and on the upper chest, because you don't want this clavicle and these heavy, wiry necks, And it's more than that, because it's not just one deform, it's several deforms that cut in and out depending on the kind of fat that you want to be. You got people who have extreme levels of fat. They have a very different sort of body shape than people who are just slightly chubby. And even within that range, there's still a lot of variation. So there's a lot of stuff that's missing from this. And I was using fat because it's really easy to see, but thousands of things are like this. Let's just invert it, skinny. This is their version of a skinny character, and it's not very convincing. One of the issues is the bone. The only issue is the bone weighting again. There's no skinniness up here, no rib notes here, no skinnier neck, no gaunter cheeks. The rib cage has collapsed, and the reason for that is because the fat scaling belly bone needs to look good when you're fat, and there's fat on top of your ribs. But because of that, the same bone, when you scale it down, pulls your ribs in as if there was still fat on top of your ribs. And you end up with this really unconvincing crushed rib cage. There's also no extra definition on the muscles of the legs and stuff like that. There's a lot of detail missing here. Some of that is texture work, and a lot of it is mesh work, especially if you're using a higher quality mesh, a larger number of faces. This mesh has as many faces in the whole mesh as my mesh has in maybe half of the head. It's got less than 10,000 faces and less than 10,000 tries, which is very low. It's a very low weight mesh, but it makes these all the more noticeable. So you could get around that in a lot of ways, but it's not really serviceable. You can't use bones like this. Not if you want to be able to adapt this far. The canon answer is to just replace the meshes if you want to have an extra fat or an extra skinny person, or if you want to have someone who's crushed down by the gravity of being born on a 3G planet, or has grown into some spidery, elfy type thing because he's been living in 0G. You replace the body mesh. You can only stretch these things so far, and that's you know, you just replace the mesh entirely. That's the best solution. That's not any better for me. I'll talk about why in a little bit. Let's go over to the head. Now, the body used bone scaling, and that's definitely how it happens in Black Desert Online and most other games. But the head has mesh scaling, or mesh manipulation. There's no bone manipulation here, except for this. They can scale the eye and eyelid bones, but they can't move them out, or in, or up, or down, and they can't move the mouth either, because if they do those things, then the bone won't work right. They need to have a translation bone behind the eye bone that grabs the whole eye socket, and they don't have that. And they need to have the same thing with the mouth. I'm going to have those translation bones because I need them. I need to have a wide variety of faces. I need the biggest variety of faces I can have. And that means that I need to be able to change the bone structure of the face. Another way I could do that is I could have different face meshes that come with different bone structures underneath them. But that's complicated in Unity because you have to weld together two armatures, which is kind of obnoxious. So, everything else is just blend shapes applied to the parts of the mesh that don't have that aren't complicated. You just manipulate the pieces of the mesh that you feel comfortable manipulating, because the nose is never animated, and the lips are animated, but they're animated in such a way where it's very forgiving. You don't have to worry too much about them going horribly wrong. And you know, the cheeks can be hollowed out or made thicker, and the chins can be changed and made stronger. But you can't change the fundamental profile of the face in terms of where the eyes are and where the mouth is. It's pretty limited, and that's not going to work in my game because I need you to have 50 characters and never ever confuse two of them. So I need to have translation as well as mesh manipulation. And Black Desert Online doesn't have that either. It's not like these guys are bad because they don't do mesh translations. Black Desert Online only does the same kind of blend shape mesh manipulations to the face. I think that theirs is more freeform, technically speaking. I think they use more mathematical operators. I'm not sure, though. Either way, you still can't move the eyes around or change the height of the mouth in Black Desert Online. All you can do is reshape the eyelids. Right. All of that stuff is complicated, and we're going to get into a little bit more later. How about we go back to the body and we talk about clothes? So this system is a pretty good one. What they do is they create a custom texture for each character. At least I'm 90% sure that's what they do. And so this atlas has stuff printed into it, and you can just stamp in more stuff. And in this case, you can see that this character has 3 articles of clothing stamped into their atlas. The underwear, the bra, and the shirt are all different textures that are just stamped on top of their body texture. And that works pretty well. If you're looking for super tight clothes, if you're looking for just, you know, skin tight clothes, then that's what you do. You just stamp it into the texture, and that's fine. But you can see that it's not very convincing when you view it at various angles. The shirt kind of adheres to the skin in weird ways. There's no seams or anything. Everything is painted in using a really, really aggressive set of normal maps. And it looks not great when you start to get body shapes that wouldn't have wrinkles there. Not great. Let's see if we can find the really decorative shirt here. This shirt is really, really wrinkly, like you can see. And that doesn't work very well when you've got a character who is heavy around the waist, because that's not how shirts act when you're heavy around the waist. It's also just generally still not very convincing because this doesn't act right, and even the wrinkles underneath here don't act right. Physically speaking, this shirt is oddly skin tight, and that's just how all of these painted on shirts are. The good news about them is that they're very, very lightweight, and you never have any pop through. It's impossible to pop through because they're painted on your skin, and they're lightweight. There's no additional meshes. It's the same, same texture mass. So, very lightweight, but very limited. They do have other kinds of shirts or other kinds of clothes. Here, this is a typical shirt that you might wear, right? But here's the issue. Now let's see if we can get close enough to... we look like we're erroring out here. Let's try this. Oh, that's not what I wanted to click on. Oh, come on. Where are you? There you are. Why are you suddenly giving me trouble, Unity? I just want to poke my camera through her shirt. Alright, for some reason Unity has decided it doesn't want to let you see inside her shirt. I don't know why. It's worked literally 5 minutes ago. Her body still exists inside her shirt. That's the trick, the key. No, you're not gonna let me see it? Well, you can see the outline here. You can see how her body is still inside there. And that is a typical way to do it. The problem is that you're still going to get pop through, and the shirt has to float like an inch off her chest, or off her whole body. And that gives you a very, very puffy look, and it's just not suitable if you are trying to do any kind of actual, real-looking clothes. I have uniforms for my characters. I don't want their uniforms to float an inch above the rest of their body. Not unless they're strangely baggy uniforms. Now, not all of the clothes are like that because, for example, the men have jeans. Oh, I just passed one. Jeans. And these jeans actually overwrite the body mesh. There's no mesh inside these jeans. And the way that happens is there's actually a seam on the body, and they just replace the lower body mesh entirely. But they couldn't do that with the shirt because it's got those... it's got the arms coming out of it, and it's got maybe some neck showing. So they had to overlay it, which is not going to work. I can't do that because it would look bad. You have pop through or it floats way above your skin. It's just not suitable. I've got to do something more like this. Of course, this is also very limited because all of the waistbands are going to be at the exact same height because you got to cover up the seam. You have to make sure that you have full-length pants because otherwise you're going to have legs showing and you can't delete just this part using Uma's method. Oh, it's a nightmare. There's also another nightmare built into this. Uma uses bone scaling, and that works great because these map to the same bones. But I've been talking about how I have to use some mesh systems. I have to be able to deform those meshes in order to put on things like extra fat and stuff. If I create pants and shirts, I'm going to have to do that same set of actions for every piece of clothing I ever create. And you modders out there are going to have to create these same actions. So every time I create a shirt, I'm going to have to create a shirt that knows what it means to be heavy and what it means to be light and what it means to be wide and what it means to be short and what it means to be too big or wrinkled or whatever else I want to put in there. That's a lot of work. And it's made much, much worse because these pants don't fit well onto the female character. They would look just like this. This is the mesh. And similarly, the women's shirt, there it is, I passed it. That shirt looks, that shirt can't even be on the male character because it floats above the body, and the male character's body is a different shape. So you'd end up with a shirt that is clipping through half the time, and the other half the time it's fine. It just wouldn't look right. So how do you create a system where you can put clothing onto any mesh and also not worry about skin pop through? There is actually a way to do it. There are a couple of ways to do it. The way that I've done before is every mesh has a blend shape or a version that has the same vertex count and same vertex order that puts them into a default pose, the same default pose that you normally get like this, for example. But the key here is that it's not just the pose that's being mimicked. The whole body has to fill the exact same space in the exact same way. And that would just be, you have a demo version, the default, and you turn that into like wireframe mode, and then you just manipulate whatever mesh you're using until it fills the same space. Then what you do is, in Unity, you can use that proxy to map the clothes. So, for example, if I built clothes around this character here, and then this was the default character, I could put a male character into the exact same space, and then even if the male character, was a giant lizard man from the planet Jupiter, when his shoulders beefed up, when you revert his mesh back to its actual shape, and he gets all beefy and burly, the clothes have already mapped themselves to the nearest vert. So the shirt goes, okay, well, I'm closest to this vert, and the verts go, I'm closest to this vert, I'm closest to this vert, I'm closest to this vert, I'm closest to this vert. And when those verts move back to the actual position they're supposed to be in, they take the clothes with them. Moreover, the clothes can do a lot more with that information. They can say, I'm going to bond to the same bones that vert is bonded to with the same weights. I'm going to understand all of these things. I've connected to all of these verts. Well, that means all of those verts are inside the clothing and can be deleted. So no pop through. Even if, for example, let's say that there's a male character here, and I model a shirt onto the male character, and then the female character gets modeled in. It's guaranteed that the shirt isn't going to match the exact frame of this character's bust, for example. And instead what it'll do is it'll just offset the correct amount, and you'll end up with something that looks right, and there'll be no pop through because the bust will be deleted. It's been mapped to, so it's obviously hidden behind the clothes. That stuff needs to be polished. It needs to be worked on. I've done the non-deletion version, just the mapping. I've done that. It works great, but I haven't done any attempt to delete the underlying mesh. So we'll have to see how that works. There are some problems with this approach. One problem is that if I am using blend shapes to make characters fatter or skinnier or wider or shorter or whatever, I have to map that into every single article of clothing. Each piece of clothing has to have all those blend shapes. I think I mentioned this before, and it's a travesty. It's just not going to work. Well, that's when I can start to stop using blend shapes. Or more correctly, I use a blend shape that is not actually used as a blend shape in Unity. What I do is I take that blend shape and I map it to a UV image. And this is what The Sims 4 does. Anything that shares the same UV layout can figure out what sort of offset it's looking to do, even if it has different verts. So as long as the male and female characters, as long as the children and the zombie monster from Saturn, as long as they all have the same basic UV layout, regardless of the actual verts involved, they can still figure out how far they have to offset in order to match whatever shape it is. And because the clothes, this is the part that is a little bit rough. The clothes don't have the same UV layout as a character. That would be really, really hard to do. But the clothes know what the UV map of the character is. So what happens is the clothes end up making themselves a second UV map, which they use just for offsetting themselves. So if this shirt got mapped to a skinny lady, it would understand that the body parts that it's mapped to are slated to be retracted 4 inches or whatever, so that you've got your gaunt stomach. And then they would retract that same amount. I think that'd work. It works in Sims 4, but Sims 4 has a lot of optimizations involving they have very specific meshes, and their meshes are really, really big with metadata. They're fat with metadata, which means that they understand things like how to walk down the legs, loop cut by loop cut, face loop by face loop, and that's something that's not really part of my plan. So I'll have to see whether or not I can get even a fraction of that running. These are the difficulties in trying to build your own engine. But basically, I want to make it so that you, as a user, can make a new set of pants or whatever, and it just automatically works for everyone with no pop-through. Whether it's a child or a giant alien monster, as long as it's got the same number of limbs, I want it to work. Anyway, if you have any great ideas, let me know. If you know about a product like that that's available for purchase on Unity's asset store that I happen to overlook, please let me know. It's stuff that I'm confident I can program it, but I'm also confident it's going to take a lot of time. So if you have any ways to shave time off of that, that would be great. But keep in mind that I am aiming for fairly realistic characters. And so it's difficult for me to pursue, say, a voxel solution. I couldn't really do that, even though it would make most of my worries go away. Yeah. So I hope you enjoyed this long technical ramble. 20 minutes. I think that's plenty. I'm gonna go fall asleep.